Today we're going to use Adobe Photoshop and we're going to be having a look at the 4 purposes. So the first thing is when you open Photoshop, if we go to File and New and have a look at your size. Now you can customize your size, you can do it portrait, you can do it landscape, you can change the width and height of what you want your page to be looking like. And for mine, I'm going to be having a square. There are other options. You can have a look at photo. If you want to put it as a photo, there's print, art and illustration, and if you want to have it on the web or on a mobile, you will choose your design based on where you want to display your product. So I'm going to go to a recent one, and I'm going to go 2020, and I'm going to create, and it is going to be a square logo. I'm going to be creating a logo for the 4 purposes, so I'm going to complete a different logo for each one of the options. We've got complete, able, capable learner, enterprising, creative contributor, healthy, confident individuals, and ethical, informed citizens. So on Adobe Photoshop, you've got lots of different options that you can have a look at. Up here, you can choose the different colors. We've got swatches, we've got gradients, we've got patterns, and we've got the properties on the bottom section. We've got some adjustments that you can make and some libraries. And if you have a look at the bottom, you can see how big your page is and the pixel resolution. So when we've got our size set up, probably the best thing to do is to start having a look at some preferences. Alright, so make it easier as we're going along. So if we go to Edit, we can go down to Preferences. And if we go to General, what we can do is we want to turn on the General tab, the Use Legacy Free Transform. Okay, that will help you to resize things a lot easier. So click that and press OK. Okay, so let's get some images in and get started. So I've started collecting some images, and all you literally need to do is drag and drop it onto your page and it will place it on there for you. It's got a bounding box around the edges which will allow you to resize your image to fit it on to your page. Now this is going to be a logo for ethical, informed citizens, so mine is going to be about Wales. I've got a nice mountain of Wales at the back, and I can scale it up and down, I can move it around depending on what I want on my page. So you can see on the right hand side my panel options are quite large. You've got quite a nice little thumbnail. Now to get that, if you click on the hamburger options at the bottom and go to panel options, I've changed it to the largest. So normally when you first go in, it might be a very small thumbnail, so if I put this back, that's how it normally comes in. So if you put it onto a larger option, you get to see all your different layers in a far larger thumbnail, which I think works really, really well. Okay, so let's have a look what we can do to this particular image. So if we have a look, I can click on the image and I can go to the half black, half white circle at the bottom, and then I can change the colors a little bit. So maybe a nice one could be the hue or saturation. So I could do things like colorize, and it will adjust the color like that, and I can adjust the color to make it maybe a little more green or a little more red, make it a bit brighter, do the lightness or darkness, and I can do the same without the colorize to see, well, that looks quite nice, that looks quite Welsh. Okay, so I've got my green for the mountains and I've got some red down the bottom, so I quite like that one for my hue and saturation. When I'm on the layers, so I've got here, this becomes a mask. Okay, so this is the layer mask, and if you press the eye on and off, it can take the features off so that you can see what it looked like originally and see how you've made a change to the effects. So click on here to change the colors, and this is the layer mask, but we'll talk a little bit more about them after. Okay, so I think that I'd like to have something around the edge at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at another layer. Obviously there's plenty of options for you to have a look at. Please have a play around, see what you can do. Just don't copy the tutorial. So if we go to the gradient, I'd quite like something around the edges. So you can see at the moment I've got the gradient is starting at black, because if you have a look on the swatches panel on the left, I've got a black and black as my main and white as my and I quite like maybe to have a radial, and if I press reverse it will give me a bit of an outline, and I can change the colours and the styles and the dither. You can change it with a radial, you know, the angle's not going to make much difference. I can make it larger, or I can make it smaller, so slightly around the edge, and you can bring it in and play around with it as you see fit. And it just gives a nice little extra effect on your page. Okay, so you can see we've added a gradient layer just on the bottom by here on the right. If I just show you another quick trick, when we're on gradient fill, if we double click on this option, you have an extra button. Okay, so if we bring the size of the black in, you can see that it makes it lighter on one side and lighter on the other. Now you can go in and you can swap around the colours, and you can choose different options. So if you'd like possibly maybe some greens, you can have a look there, have a look what you like and have a play around. And if you cannot see, sometimes you cannot see the image, I didn't press yes, okay, on this one. Okay, so if you can't see the image behind, if you've chosen a blend which overlaps, what I suggest you do, this will start as normal, and if you click on the down arrow, if you hover over, you can see how the image changes depending on what you choose. Okay, so have a look, have a play around, see which ones actually fit for you. So you've got a bit of an inverse, some hue, alright, that's quite a nice one, luminosity, and have a play around, see what you want as your background design. Okay, so what I'm going to have a look at now, so we've got our page at the moment, so we've added some filters, we've added some hue, we've got a picture of Wales. I think maybe there's more things that make us an informed citizen, so it's understanding about our culture and our background and how that we can look after our environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the internet and go and find an image of Wales. So I've gone and had a look, and I think maybe Cardiff Castle is a nice one. So if I take a copy of the Cardiff Castle picture, or save the image, and I go back to my Photoshop, don't paste it straight on here, but if you have a blank page, and then you can paste it in. Okay, so just file new, and you can paste it in. Now up here we have some tools. These are very handy tools. These are our object selection tools. So you've got the quick selection tool and the object selection tool. So I'm first of all going to choose the object selection and click on the castle and say it's the castle that I want. Now while it's trying to work out obviously what shape it's looking at, it will take a little bit of time, so give it a second, we'll see how it does. Okay, so if I hover my mouse over the castle, you can see it's got a nice outline of the castle, so it's done a pretty good job of selecting the image. Now what I can do if I want to make a bit more of a change to it, okay, you can click on Alt and push the image to exactly where you want it. Okay, so if you just hover over, you can push it. If you hold down the Alt, you can push things back in. Okay, so without the Alt, it pushes it out, and if you want to push it back in, you hold down the Alt key. Alright, so that's given us quite a nice outline of our castle. So I can just Control and C now and copy it, and then paste it on to my page. And you can see here now I've got the castle in the middle of my Ethical Informed Citizens page. And to move it, you press Control T, and here it'll give you the selection tool and you'll be able to move it around. Okay, So based on what you decide to put in, you might want to readjust your page. So if I want to maybe readjust the Wales background, I can press Ctrl and T and maybe move it around a bit. I think maybe the castle, if I double click to the side, right, maybe the castle needs to be over here. So Ctrl and T again, and it allow me to drag it where I wanted. I can flip it over if I wanted to, and then I can pop my castle just on the lake. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is put on some text. So if I click, I can say I am an ethical, informed citizen. You can resize it. You can see the size at the top. I think maybe this is a little too large. So highlight it and change it. You can change the different fonts that you want. You can make it center or to the right or to the left justified. Okay, so it's added a 3D effect onto there. Okay, so as you can see, I've added a few more images to do with being an ethical, informed citizen. So I've got the fact that we're a mining culture, we've got our daffodils, we've got the clock from Aberfan, which has got an effect on it. So if you can see here, we've got some effects on the Aberfan clock. We've got some litter picking, we've got the sheep, we've got St. David's flag and the Welsh flag. One thing that's missing, I think, is to do with how we embrace everybody in every culture. So what I've done is I've got an image for Pride, and the same way we did before, we can take a quick copy of it. Alright, so we've got the selection of the Pride on the outside of the Wales flag, and what you can do at the bottom, a different way to, rather than just copy and paste, to keep the quality of it, you can press this clipping mask. So it's like a white rectangle with a black circle in the middle. Alright, so it adds a vector mask. And as you can see now, it's taken away anything that wasn't selected. So this allows you now to be able to click and drag it, and then drag and drop it onto the page that you want. Control T again to resize. Can't see the edges, they're so large. And pop it on there. So I think this makes me a very rounded, informed citizen of Wales. The other thing that we need to think about is when you bring in new images. Can you see now I've just brought in that new layer? It's just called layer 1. Right, this is going to be causing confusion. So you just double click on it and you can rename. Alright, that's important for your layers, to rename all your different layers so that you can organize them. And the other thing that you can do, which is important, is that you can insert different folders. So what I've done is I made sure that my background, for example, was in a background layer, and that meant that when I put an effect on it, it only affects that one particular layer. Okay, so to add a folder, you click on the folder icon at the bottom. Right, it will add a new folder, and you can rename the folder. So I can say Pride, for example, and drag all the images and drag and drop them to link them in. Okay, so folders are important. Naming structures are important so that you don't get confused. So I've got all my different flowers. You can press the I button to hide things so you can check the layers, and hope you enjoy.